The morning my daughter-in-law told me the guest room needed to stay free for her college friends, I was standing at my own kitchen sink in a nightgown I'd owned since before she ever set foot in my house. I had just come home from a 7-hour overnight shift at Walmart, stocking the cereal aisle and the bread section, and 4 full pallets of canned soup that someone had left sitting on a pallet jack near the loading dock. My feet ached the way they always do after a long night on concrete floors. My lower back had that familiar tight burn that starts around the 4th hour and doesn't fully leave until the next morning. I was 68 years old, and I had been on my feet since 11 the previous night. My daughter-in-law was standing near the refrigerator in a silk robe and slippers, scrolling through her phone with one hand and holding a cup of coffee she hadn't offered to share with the other. "The guest room," she said again, not even looking up. "Just so you know, Kylie and Bree are coming Thursday. They'll need their space." Their space. I set my tote bag down on the counter slowly. Inside, it was a crumpled granola bar wrapper, a thermos that had gone cold around 2 in the morning, and a receipt from the vending machine near the breakroom where I had bought a bag of peanuts at 4:30 because I hadn't eaten since dinner the evening before. My daughter-in-law's name is Serena. She had been living in my house for 2 years and 4 months. My son Derek had moved back in just before that, after his apartment lease ended and before the wedding. I had told them both it was temporary. That word again. Temporary. I had believed it the way you believe a weather forecast. Hopefully, but not entirely. That guest room had been my sewing room for 11 years. I moved the machine out myself when they arrived, carried it to the garage wrapped in an old sheet, and told myself I would set it back up eventually. The room currently held a queen bed I had bought on sale, a nightstand Derek had carried in from somewhere, and approximately 14 of Serena's decorative throw pillows, arranged in a way that made the room look like a catalog page nobody asked for. "So, you're saying your friends are sleeping in my sewing room," I said. Serena finally looked up from her phone. "It's the guest room," she said patiently, "the way you correct a child who has used the wrong word." I looked at her for a moment. Then I walked to the cabinet, got a glass, and filled it with water from the tap. My hands were still a little stiff from the cold of the stockroom. The back section near frozen foods stays about 55 degrees even in summer. I wear a jacket over my vest, but it never quite reaches my fingers. Derek came into the kitchen then, in basketball shorts and a t-shirt, the way he dresses at 10:30 in the morning on a Wednesday when he has decided not to go into the office until after lunch. He looked at both of us with the cautious expression of a man who has learned to read the temperature of a room before choosing a side. "Morning," he said carefully. "Morning," I replied. Serena smiled at him and tipped her coffee cup toward me. "I was just telling your mom about Kylie and Bree coming Thursday." Derek nodded. "Yeah, she mentioned that." He opened the refrigerator and looked inside for a moment, then closed it again. He opened a cabinet. "Close that too." Then he looked at me. "You doing okay, Mom? Long night?" 7 hours, I said. He winced slightly. The polite kind of wince. The one that acknowledges something without engaging it. I drank half the glass of water and looked out the window above the sink. The backyard was brown from the late summer drought. The birdbath I had put out years ago was empty and slightly tilted. I kept meaning to straighten it. Serena had mentioned once that it looked a little depressing out there. She had used that exact word, depressing. From behind me, I heard Serena say something to Derek about the Kylie and Bree visit, something about needing to go to Whole Foods before they arrived, something about whether the air fryer was clean. Derek answered in the easy, accommodating voice he uses with her, the one that is slightly warmer than the one he uses with me. I finished the water, rinsed the glass, and set it in the drying rack. Nobody asked how the shift had gone. Nobody asked if I was tired. Nobody suggested I go rest. The only thing anyone had found worth saying to me since I walked through my own front door was that 2 women I had never met would need my sewing room on Thursday. I picked up my tote bag. Then I walked down the hall toward my bedroom, past the family photographs on the wall, past the small table where I keep a lamp that belonged to my mother, past the bathroom door with the towel rack that Derek had promised to fix 6 weeks ago and hadn't. I lay down on top of the covers still in my work clothes and looked at the ceiling. It was in that quiet, that particular kind of tired quiet that goes deeper than sleep, that the thought arrived. Not dramatic, not even angry. Just a flat, clear observation the way you might notice a window that needs replacing. I had been living in the corner of my own house for 2 years. Hello, everyone. It's Hannah. Our friend Margaret is 68, up all night on her feet, and the first thing she hears when she walks through the door is that she needs to make room for her daughter-in-law's guests. If you've ever felt invisible in your own home, stay with me, because this is where the story really begins. The Thursday visit arrived the way things do, when you are not looking forward to them, faster than seemed reasonable. Kylie and Bree turned out to be 2 women in their mid-30s, with matching rolling suitcases and the cheerful, slightly loud energy of people who are very comfortable wherever they go. They arrived Thursday afternoon and immediately took over the living room in the way guests do when they don't think of themselves as guests at all. I came home from a daytime errand around 4 o'clock and found them on the couch with their shoes off, blankets pulled from somewhere, watching a show I didn't recognize on the television at a volume I could hear from the front porch. 3 wine glasses were on my coffee table. A bag of chips had left a thin salt residue on the cushion nearest the armrest. Serena was in the armchair, laughing at something one of them had said. Derek was nowhere visible. "Oh," Kylie said when she saw me, looking up briefly. "You must be Derek's mom." "That's right," I said. Serena smiled. "Hey, we saved you a spot," she said, gesturing toward the small love seat in the corner that I had bought at an estate sale 15 years ago and reupholstered myself with a dark green fabric that my husband had picked out. He always had a good eye for color. I looked at the love seat. Then I looked at the coffee table with the wine glasses and the chip residue. Then I said I was actually going to rest for a while and walk down the hallway. I could hear Serena saying something behind me. Something bright and slightly apologetic in tone, explaining me to her friends the way you explain a piece of furniture that is slightly out of place. That night, I could not sleep. The walls in the house are thin enough that the living room television carried down the hall until almost midnight. There was laughing, and the particular high-pitched sound of women in their 30s having a good time in someone else's house, with no awareness that it is someone else's house. At 12:30, I got up, put on my robe, and went to the kitchen for tea. The sink had a collection of glasses and small plates from what appeared to have been a charcuterie board at some point. There was a cutting board out with dried brie on it, and a small spreading knife resting beside a ring of red wine someone had set directly on my counter without a coaster. I stood there looking at it for a moment. Then I filled the kettle and set it on the stove. Serena appeared in the doorway a few minutes later, still smiling from whatever conversation she had just been having. She stopped when she saw me. "Oh," she said. "Sorry, did we wake you?" "I'm just having tea," I said. She leaned against the doorframe with her wine glass. She had the relaxed posture of someone who has never once felt unwelcome in a room. "Kylie and Bree are so great," she said. "I feel like you'd really like them if you spent more time with them." I waited for the kettle. "You should come hang out," she said. "We're just watching stuff and talking." She paused. "It might be more fun than just sitting in your room." "I'm fine," I said. She shrugged the small shrug of someone who has offered and been declined and does not particularly mind. "Okay," she said, and drifted back toward the living room. I poured my tea and stood at the counter drinking it in the kitchen of my own house at nearly 1 in the morning, listening to the sounds of other people being comfortable, and I thought about a lot of things. I thought about the year I bought this house. 1991. My husband Paul and I had scraped together the down payment over 3 years, keeping a running total on a piece of notebook paper tucked into the kitchen drawer. The day we signed the paperwork, Paul had taken me out for a dinner we technically could not afford and ordered a bottle of champagne. Neither of us had any business drinking on a Tuesday. He said it was the most important Tuesday of our lives, and therefore it counted as a weekend. I thought about the years after he passed, how the house had held me through that, how I had learned to handle every repair and every bill and every decision alone, and how strange it was that doing all of it alone had made me feel capable rather than abandoned. Eventually, I thought about the morning 2 years ago when Derek had called and said things weren't working out with the apartment. How I had said, of course, come home, stay as long as you need. How Serena had arrived 3 weeks later with the rolling suitcases and the throw pillows, and the quiet assumption that my home was now a shared space in which her preferences carried equal weight. I finished the tea and rinsed the cup. Then I looked at the brie on the cutting board and the ring of wine on my counter, and I thought about something much simpler. How long it had been since I had walked through my own front door and felt like I was walking into my own life. The answer was too long to be acceptable. The next morning, after Kylie and Bree had gathered their rolling suitcases and said their cheerful goodbyes and driven away, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and my reading glasses and the folder I keep in the bottom drawer of my desk, the one with the house documents. I had not opened it in a long time. The deed was near the top. Margaret Louise Calloway. My name only. Paul had set it up that way, years before he got sick. Just practical, he had said, just in case. I hadn't fully understood the wisdom of it until much later. I sat with it in my hand for a moment. Then I did something I had been turning over in the back of my mind for longer than I had admitted to myself. I opened my laptop and looked up the name of the real estate agent who had sold the Hargrove house down the street 8 months ago. Her name was Patricia Dunn, and the sign in the Hargroves' yard had said she was the one to call if you needed someone who got things done without any nonsense. I liked that phrasing, without any nonsense. I wrote her number on the back of an envelope and looked at it for a few minutes. From upstairs I could hear Derek moving around, and Serena's voice on a phone call, and the particular kind of quiet that means nobody is thinking about me. I dialed the number. Patricia answered on the second ring. Sharp voice, efficient. I told her my name and my address, and that I had a 3-bedroom house in good condition on a corner lot, with a mature silver maple in the front yard that was probably the nicest thing on the block. She laughed, just slightly. I like a seller who knows their property, she said. I told her I wanted to know how quickly the house could sell in the current market if I priced it right. She asked me a few questions. Square footage, age, updates, condition. I answered all of them. Then she said something that sat in my chest, with a particular weight. In this neighborhood, she said, with those specs, probably 2 weeks, maybe less. 2 weeks. I looked out the window at the empty birdbath in the backyard. Would you like to come take a look? I asked. Patricia Dunn arrived on a Saturday morning at 8:30. I had been up since 6, which was not unusual for me. I had already walked twice around the block, made a full pot of coffee, and eaten the yogurt with granola that I eat for breakfast most days, because my doctor told me 3 years ago that I needed more calcium, and I have been making an effort ever since. Derek and Serena were still upstairs when Patricia knocked. That was the part I had timed, perhaps not entirely by accident. She was a small woman in her late 50s, dark blazer, sensible shoes, the kind of calm that comes from having walked through hundreds of houses and understood that each one was someone's entire story. She looked at the porch and the yard and the maple tree before she said a single word. That tree it's been there since we moved in, I told her. My husband always said it was the best thing we ever planted. She nodded once and stepped inside. We moved through the house quietly. Kitchen, dining room, living room. She asked questions about the windows, the roof, the last time the furnace had been serviced. She wrote things on a small yellow notepad with a mechanical pencil. She stood in the kitchen and looked at the light coming through the window and said, "Good bones." People always say that about old houses, but when Patricia said it, she sounded like she actually meant something specific by it. When we reached the upstairs hallway, Serena's bedroom door opened. She appeared in the doorway looking surprised, and then not surprised, and then something I can only describe as calculating. She looked at Patricia, then at me, then at Patricia's notepad. "She's a friend," I said. Serena's smile was the kind that does not reach the eyes. "Oh," she said slowly. "Right." Patricia smiled back the way people do when they have no investment in the tension of a room. "Just touring the space," she said pleasantly. Serena's door closed again. We finished the walkthrough and came back downstairs. Patricia flipped through her notes at the kitchen table while I poured us each a cup of coffee. She asked a few more questions. Then she folded her hands and looked at me directly. Can I be straightforward? She asked. Please, I said. You could list this house next week and have a signed contract before the week after, she said. The market here is hungry, and your property is better than most of what's available. She paused. Is there anything that would complicate the sale? I thought about Derek and Serena upstairs. Not legally, I said. Patricia nodded. Then she said, Is there anything personally that would complicate it? I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup. No, I said. Actually, I think this is the simplest decision I've made in a long time. She looked at me for a moment longer than necessary. Then she wrote something on her notepad, tore off the page, and slid it across the table. That's what I'd listed at, she said. It might go over. I looked at the number. I'll be in touch Monday, I told her. I walked her to the door. When I turned around, Derek was standing at the bottom of the stairs. His expression was careful. Who was that? He asked. Patricia Dunn, I said, a real estate agent. He blinked. For what? I walked back toward the kitchen. For the house, I said. The silence behind me lasted about 4 seconds. Then I heard him take a breath. Mom. I poured myself a second cup of coffee and waited. He came into the kitchen slowly. His voice had dropped the way it does when he's trying to be reasonable. What do you mean? For the house. I'm thinking about selling, I said. He pulled out a chair. He did not sit in it. He just held the back of it like it was something to hold on to. You're thinking about selling our house? My house, I said. He flinched. Right, but... He gestured around the kitchen. We live here. I know you do. I said. Mom, this is... He stopped. This is out of nowhere. I thought about the overnight shifts. The granola bar at 4:30 in the morning. The brie on my counter. The word depressing applied to my bird bath. The guest room where my sewing machine used to be. It's not out of nowhere, I told him. It just looks that way from where you're standing. Upstairs, a door opened. Then footsteps. Then Serena appeared in the kitchen doorway with the same measuring look she'd had upstairs, except now it was aimed directly at me. So, you're actually selling? She said. I'm considering it. Her chin came up slightly. Because of us? I held her gaze. Because it's my house, and I get to make that decision, I said. She opened her mouth, closed it. Then she said, Derek. He raised both hands. I know. I know. He looked at me. Can we talk about this? Properly? We are talking about it, I said. He sat down finally. Mom, look. If this is about money, we can start contributing more. We can figure something out. It's not about money, I said. Not primarily. Then what is it? I looked at him. My son, 41 years old, a good man at his core, a man his father would have recognized and been proud of, except for the particular way he had learned to make himself small in his own marriage, and had let that smallness spread into everything around him, including me. I raised you in this house, I said. I paid for it myself for the last 11 years. I work nights so I can keep the lights on. And I came home the other morning and the first thing I heard was that I needed to make room for Serena's friends in my sewing room. He shifted. That wasn't. I am not asking you to apologize, Derek. I'm explaining why. He looked at the table. Serena crossed her arms. You're punishing us, she said. No, I said. I'm making a decision about my own life. Those aren't the same thing. She laughed, short and sharp. By selling the house out from under us? You have 30 days from the close of sale, I said. That's standard. Her eyes widened. 30 days. Yes. Derek rubbed his face with both hands. Mom, we can't find a place in 30 days. A lot of people do, I said. The room went quiet in that particular way that means everyone is recalculating. I picked up my coffee cup, found it empty, and set it back down. I'm calling Patricia Monday, I said. I wanted you both to know before I did. Serena turned and walked out of the kitchen. I heard her on the stairs, and then the bedroom door closing with a firmness that was not quite a slam but wanted to be. Derek stayed at the table. "Where would you go?" he asked quietly. "I've been looking at a few places," I said. He looked up. "Already?" "For about 3 weeks," I said. He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Are you happy here, Mom? Like, genuinely?" I thought about the honest answer to that question, about what it felt like to unlock my own front door at 6 in the morning after a long night and feel like a visitor in a house I had owned for over 30 years. "Not lately," I said. He nodded. Just nodded. And something in his expression shifted, not dramatically, but enough. The way a window shifts when someone finally cracks it open after a long winter. I called Patricia on Monday. By Wednesday, the house was on the market. The photographs Lucas had taken made the kitchen look like something from a magazine, all that morning light through the old windows, and the silver maple just visible through the glass. Patricia had been right about the bones. Derek told Serena that evening. I know because I heard her voice from down the hall, and then I heard the long quiet that followed, which was in some ways louder. She came to find me in the backyard. I was sitting on the bench Paul built the year we turned the back garden into something actually worth sitting in. It was October now, and the air had that clean, cutting smell of leaves and cold earth that I have always loved. "You listed it," she said from the doorstep. "Yes?" Without discussing it with us, I looked at her. "I told you I was going to." She came down the 2 steps into the yard. Her arms were crossed, but something in her face was different tonight. Less sharp. More something she was working to hold back. "Where are we supposed to go?" she asked. "You could start looking at apartments near Derek's office," I said. "There are 2-bedroom units on Millbrook that are very reasonable." She stared at me. "You looked?" "I may have done a little research," I said. She shook her head. "I don't understand you." She said it quietly, which was different from the way she usually said things to me. "We've been here. We've been part of this house. And you've been staying here," I said gently. "There is a difference." The yard was quiet except for the wind in the maple. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice, and then went silent. "I want you to know," I said, "that I don't have any hard feelings about any of it. Not the sewing room, not the guest room, not the things that felt small at the time and turned out to be not so small." She looked at me with an expression I couldn't entirely read. "I just want my life back," I said. "That's the whole of it." She stood there a moment longer. Then she went back inside without answering. That night I sat out on the bench until it was almost too cold to stay, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not happy exactly, something quieter. The specific piece of a decision already made. Friends, can you imagine standing in your own backyard, feeling like a guest in your own story? Margaret has been patient for 2 years. But patience has limits. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is stop waiting. What would you have done in her place? The first offer arrived 36 hours after the listing went live. Patricia texted me while I was in the bread aisle at work, and I had to excuse myself to the break room to call her back because I could not have that conversation next to the sourdough. "Serious buyers," she said. "They love the maple." "Of course they do," I said. It was a good offer. 2 days later, there were 3 more. One of them was above asking. Patricia was not surprised. I was, slightly, even knowing what she had told me. There is something different about seeing a number on paper than hearing it said out loud. I called her from the bench in the backyard on a Thursday evening with a cup of tea and the deed in my lap, not for any practical reason, just because it felt right to have it nearby. I told her to go with the highest offer. She said she would have made the same choice. When I came inside and told Derek and Serena, there was a different quality to the silence this time. 3 weeks of silence in this house had moved through several stages. The first week had been charged, full of sharp edges and doors closed with emphasis. The second week had been colder, a careful distance that Serena maintained with the precision of someone who has decided that silence is more effective than arguing. Derek had come to sit with me a few times in the evenings, not saying much, just present in the way he is sometimes when he runs out of things to justify. The third week, something shifted. I came home from an early morning shift and found the kitchen clean. Not just rinsed, but actually cleaned. The stovetop wiped down, the counter free of its usual scatter of mail, and Serena's various beauty products that had gradually colonized the space near the window. The coffee was already made. I stood there for a moment looking at it. Derek appeared in the doorway. He had the cautious look of a man who has done something and is not entirely sure how it will be received. Figured I could handle breakfast cleanup, he said. You know, while you're still here. That last part. While you're still here. Thank you, I said. He poured a cup and handed it to me. Mom, I'm sorry. I looked at him. I've been thinking a lot about how things have been. He stopped. About stuff I didn't notice. I appreciated that he said notice instead of mean. It was a more honest word. I'm not angry at you, I said. I know. He looked at his hands around the cup. I think that almost makes it worse. We stood in the kitchen for a few minutes, not saying much, which was fine. Some things don't need a great deal of language. Serena came downstairs a little while later and stopped in the doorway. She saw the two of us and she didn't say anything for a moment. Then she walked to the coffee maker and poured a cup and leaned against the counter, and there was something different about the way she was standing. Less performance in it. We found an apartment, she said to me. Near Derek's office, 2 bedrooms. We're signing Friday. Good, I said. Millbrook? She looked slightly surprised. Kessler Street, she said. Just off it. I nodded. That's a good block. She held her coffee with both hands. It has a small balcony, she said. Derek likes the idea of having a grill. He does, I said. For a moment, the 3 of us were just people in a kitchen drinking coffee, which was something we had not quite managed before. Serena looked at me over the rim of her cup. I know I wasn't easy, she said finally. I didn't argue with that. I think I forgot that it wasn't our house, she said. It started to feel like it was. That's what happens when something becomes too comfortable, I said. I've thought about that too, both sides of it. She set her cup down. I don't hate you for this, she said. I want you to know that. I don't hate you either, I said. It wasn't a warm moment, but it was an honest one, and that is sometimes better. 2 days before the close, the house began to look the way houses look when they are almost done being yours. The closets echoed when you opened them. The shelves held faint shadows where things had sat for years. The kitchen, almost empty now, looked bigger and lighter than it had in a long time. I kept a few things to the very end. The bench in the backyard I let go with the house because it belonged there, and Paul would have agreed. The lamp from my mother, I wrapped carefully in a quilt and packed in the front seat of my car. The sewing machine, still in the garage in its sheet, went into the small storage unit I had rented until I could set it up properly in the new place. Derek helped me carry things to the car on the last day. He did not make it dramatic. He just showed up at 8 in the morning with coffee and lifted boxes without being asked and said very little, which was exactly the right thing to do. Serena came down near the end. She had her own bags stacked near the door, their moving boxes already in Derek's truck. She watched me wrap the photograph from the hallway, the one of Paul and me the year we bought the house, squinting at each other in the late afternoon sun of a May afternoon in 1991, both of us younger than Derek was now. Is that the day you bought it? She asked. Closing day, I said. She studied it for a moment. You both look so young. We were, I said. She handed me an extra strip of packing tape without being asked. I drove away from the house just after noon. The silver maple was fully turned by then, deep gold and orange, and when I looked in the rearview mirror, it was the last thing I saw before I turned the corner. I didn't cry. I had thought I might. But mostly what I felt was the specific, solid weight of something complete. My new apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building near the river. It was not large. It had 2 rooms and a small kitchen and a narrow balcony that faced the water, and when I opened the door for the first time and walked through the quiet, clean, empty space, I stood in the middle of it for a long moment and simply listened. No television from another room, no voices I hadn't invited, no awareness of someone else's comfort requiring something of me, just the sound of my own breathing, and, faintly, the river. I unpacked the lamp first, then the photograph. Then I made a cup of tea and took it out to the balcony and sat down in the small folding chair I had brought from the garage. The river was silver in the afternoon light. A couple of geese moved along the far bank with the unhurried confidence of creatures who go exactly where they intend to go. Somewhere nearby, someone was grilling something that smelled like autumn. Patricia had called that morning to confirm everything was finalized. The buyers, a young couple with a baby, and the particular hopeful energy of people at the beginning of a long thing, had sent her a note to pass along. They said they loved the maple tree. They said the kitchen had good light. They said they hoped the previous owner had been happy there. I had been. For a long time, I had been. And now, sitting on a balcony above a slow gray river at 68 years old, drinking tea I had made in my own kitchen without explaining it to anyone, I understood that happiness is not a fixed thing in a fixed place. It moves when you move it. It requires a certain amount of courage to pick it back up and carry it somewhere new. I had been setting it down for 2 years, leaving it in corners, walking past it in the morning with my coat still on. Not anymore. Derek called that evening. "Just checking in," he said. "How is it?" "Quiet," I said. "Good quiet?" "Very good quiet." He was quiet for a moment on his end. "Serena says the balcony in our place gets afternoon light," he said. "I think she's going to put plants out there." "Good for her," I said. And I meant it. We talked for a few more minutes, the easy kind of talking that happens when things are out in the open and don't need to be carried anymore. Before he hung up, he said, "Mom, can we come see your place sometime?" "Anytime," I said. "Just let me know first." He laughed a little. "Fair enough." After I hung up, I went inside and made dinner in my own kitchen, something simple, pasta with olive oil and garlic, and a handful of herbs from a small pot I had bought at the farmer's market that morning and set on the windowsill. I ate at my own table, in my own quiet, and then I washed the dish and dried it and put it away. Then I went to the closet where I had propped the sewing machine against the wall, still in its sheet, and I pulled the sheet off and looked at it for a long moment. In the morning, I decided I would find a place to set it up properly. And that was how it felt. Not like an ending, like the morning of something, like the particular Tuesday my husband would have ordered champagne for. So that is Margaret's story. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't give speeches. She just made a quiet decision in a loud situation, and she kept it. Some of you will understand exactly how she felt. Some of you may still be sitting on that decision. Whatever you're carrying tonight, I hope this story found you at the right moment. If it did, let me know in the comments. And if someone in your life needs to hear this today, please share it with them. We'll see you next time.